Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated in Bleach World. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 126, Urahara Kisuke is helpless and the Arrancar Corps is about to appear. These words can only fool a brat like Toshiro Hitsugaya. If you didn't realize the true colors of these people before, you should realize it now. Uehara Shiroa completely sneered at the so-called mutual respect. The Zero Squad respected the five great nobles, but turned a blind eye to them, allowing the Shiba family to be excluded and the Tsuneyashiro family to be slaughtered. There is not a single member of the five great nobles in the Zero Squad. Is it because those old guys don't want to? If they really didn't want to, the Tsuneyashiro family would not have recorded the method of making the Oken in the Great Spirit Book Archive. The Oken can give a person power similar to that of the Soul King, making him immortal like the Zero Squad. This is the power of God. It is also a blasphemy against life and the Soul King. The purpose of the Tsuneyashiro family hiding this technology is self-evident. However, they are not strong enough and have not the courage, so they have never dared to use this technology. Aizen does not have so many scruples. Do you mean the Oken manufacturing technology? This time, Kisuke Urahara could hardly hide the shock on his face. Since you know Aizen's purpose, why don't you think about stopping him? With a complete Hogyoku in the Oken, Aizen will be unmatched. I admit that you are very capable, but the Shinigami has its limits. In his opinion, Aizen must be stopped from creating the Oken at all costs. Otherwise, by then, that terrifying man might really be able to create his own Soul King Palace and Zero Squad. Any existence that may threaten the Soul King should be completely killed. Kisuke Urahara doesn't want to see the collapse of the three realms and the death of countless innocent people. Uehara Shiroa said calmly. You shouldn't ask me this, you should ask Squad Zero. Didn't they support you? Why didn't they do it themselves? Whether the three realms are in chaos or collapse, he doesn't really care. Even if he returns to the original world, the unlucky ones are ordinary people, and it has little to do with him. However, the only problem is that if he really returns to the original world, there will be too little fun and the world will be too monotonous. In his opinion, it would be great if Genryusai Shigokuni Yamamoto and others occupied Hell in the past. He only needs to keep the Noble Street and the Flower Street. As a slacker, he can have less of anything, but not fun and enjoyment. Hearing this, Kisuke Urahara felt a chill in his heart and exclaimed. Squad Zero has other plans. I didn't even see that. What a mistake. Everyone is calculating. Everyone has their own trump cards and plans. Even Squad Zero sees them as pawns. The development of this incident is in line with Squad Zero's plan, so they didn't act immediately. In fact, in the Soul King Palace, when Squad Zero agreed to provide technical support, Kisuke Urahara was happy but felt a sense of disharmony. However, he didn't know where this disharmony came from. It wasn't until he heard Uehara Shiroa's reminder that he realized that Squad Zero and they were not actually on the same page. Things are getting complicated. You reacted quickly, but it was useless. Uehara Shiroa said calmly. Although you are not an ordinary smart person, as you said, the Shinigami has its limits. With your strength, even if you know that the intentions of the Zero Squad are not pure, you can't do anything. Every word of Kisuke Urahara is on point, and he is worthy of being the intellectual ceiling of the world of Shinigami. But without strong strength, sometimes you have to jump into it even if you know there is a pit ahead. This is the sadness of the weak. A strong man like Kisuke Urahara, who has a top IQ and strong strength, is just an insignificant weakling in front of the Zero Squad. Kisuke Urahara's eyes under the brim of his hat flashed an unusually bright light. It seems that you don't care about Squad Zero at all. Do you have any other way to break the limit of the Shinigami besides the Hogyoku? Or are you already a transcendent now? He knew that this guess was outrageous. But at present, it seems that this is the fact. Moreover, Uehara Shiroa seems to know the Soul King Palace and Squad Zero very well, as if he had installed a camera in the Soul King Palace. Whether it is courage, strength, or wisdom, the other party has surpassed him. Until now, he couldn't even determine the other party's true purpose. He suddenly felt his heart sink. At this moment, Keisuke Urahara seemed to have returned to the first time he met Captain Commander Yamamoto for the captain assessment. One word from him could determine his fate. Unknowingly, the weight of Uehara Shiroa in his heart was almost the same as that of Captain Commander Yamamoto. Uehara Shiroa had anticipated Keisuke Urahara's reaction. I came here this time to give you chance and at the same time test the attitude of the Zero Squad. Uehara Shiroa raised his eyebrows and said, "You are a smart man, why don't you make a bold guess? Why should I look for you this time? You want to plot against Squad Zero, but I have no choice now." Keisuke Urahara smiled bitterly. Although he didn't know why Uehara Shiroa was so bold that he dared to plot against Squad Zero. However, it was definitely not a coincidence that the other party could clearly grasp the movements of Squad Zero. In the current situation, Aizen stepped out from behind the scenes and set his sights on the Soul King Palace. Squad Zero also had its own plans, so they let Aizen go for the time being and let it grow wildly. Uehara Shiroa was even more ruthless, and actually regarded everyone including Squad Zero as pawns. Although Keisuke Urahara was biased towards Squad Zero and the Soul King in his heart. But the Soul King Palace was too high and too far, and he couldn't reach it at all. Therefore, he could only lean towards Uehara Shiroa and pray that the other party would treat the world well. Uehara Shiroa then pushed the teacup filled with tea over. You had no choice from the beginning. I know you have a lot of ideas, but I don't need you to have so many ideas. My arrangement for you is very simple. You just need to continue to provide technical support to the T-gun. His tone was very relaxed and calm, but there was a calmness and domineering aura that could not be ignored. Keisuke Urahara's IQ, strength, and technical ability are very strong. Especially in scientific research, it can be said that it is close to the ceiling level of the world of Shinigami. However, this person's weaknesses are too obvious. Uehara Shiroa has no shortcomings or weaknesses in all aspects, so he can naturally easily control the opponent. I couldn't ask for more. Keisuke Urahara waved his paper fan and smiled happily. Whether it is the Captain Commander or the T-gun, there are endless possibilities, which makes people admire them very much. I believe that under your wise leadership, the T-gun will get better and better. It is an honor for your subordinates to serve a big man like you. He said nice words, but he was very helpless and bitter in his heart. At this moment, he really felt what it meant to be helpless. Before, he thought about taking shortcuts and calculating Uehara Shiroa to use the other party to contain Aizen. In this way, he only needs to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Unexpectedly, the other party didn't fall into the trap at all. Instead, he fell into the calculations of others and became a pawn on the table. But for this mysterious and invincible Captain Commander of the T-gun, he had no way to do anything and could only let him be squeezed. If you can talk, talk more. Uehara Shiroa was very satisfied that Keisuke Urahara was so sensible. However, he also knew that some words were just for listening. He didn't have too high expectations for Keisuke Urahara, he just needed to do his job as a tool. The Zero Squad has no ill will towards you, in fact, everything can be discussed. Keisuke Urahara still advised. If possible, he really doesn't want to be an enemy of the Zero Squad. The world can't stand such turmoil. We'll talk about the Zero Squad later, you deal with Aizen first. Before leaving, Uehara Shiroa added. I believe you can handle Aizen, and if you can't, you can find someone else to handle it. But now, do you really see the future in Aizen clearly? He conveyed what he should convey. As for whether he can comprehend it, that is Keisuke Urahara's business. Even if the other party can't comprehend the deep meaning now, he will definitely be able to comprehend it in the future. Anyway, no matter what the result is, Shiroa will gain a few powerful tools. The complete Hogyoku will also fall into his hands. He will add a powerful trump card and complete special tasks to get new rewards. In the end, I still couldn't refuse. Looking at the elegantly leaving Uehara Shiroa, Keisuke Urahara felt a little bitter in his heart, and he almost wore a mask of pain on his face. He wanted to use Shiroha, but he was easily resolved and turned the tables. This person is really flawless, so terrifying. In addition, Keisuke Urahara envied the other party's ability to play with the world and come and go as he pleased. It's a pity that he didn't have the strength of Shiroha, nor the momentum of looking down on the world. It was not until Shiroha left that Tessai Tsukabashi secretly appeared with the two little ones. The tall former Kido Corps commander first looked around cautiously, and asked carefully. He laughed? To be honest, he is quite strong and courageous. After all, he dared to fight against the Soul Society with Keisuke Urahara. But when facing Uehara Shiroa, he was not confident enough. After all, this person's talent and strength were too terrifying. Many times, Tessai was the last guarantee for Keisuke Urahara. This was also Urahara's arrangement. In any case, some of the technology, achievements and ceiling barriers in the store must be guarded by someone. Among them are Yururu and Jinta. Therefore, Tessai Tsukabashi is so cautious and basically does not participate in the battle. He left, but we are in trouble. Keisuke Urahara was very helpless. However, after realizing that he had no choice, he quickly adjusted his mindset and began to make various backup plans. In the tea-gun base, the dignified and elegant Ora Mishabane poured tea while whispering, "Sir, are you optimistic about Keisuke Urahara?" Part of her mission in the real world was to monitor Urahara's shop. Therefore, she knew that her captain commander paid special attention to that strange man. Uehara Shiroa explained casually. This guy's brain is indeed useful enough, and can play a certain role in the subsequent plans. But it's not really that critical. He just listed Keisuke Urahara as a more useful tool. Even if the other party is very smart, he can only solve some basic problems for him. The real core action still depends on him. Keisuke Urahara is very smart, but his vision is still not enough. The other party thought that his target was Squad Zero. In fact, this conclusion is not entirely accurate. The mere Squad Zero is not worth his caution. Now Uehara Shiroa has guessed that the monk used him as a pawn, just like Keisuke Urahara wanted him to deal with Aizen. Squad Zero also wanted to use him to deal with Yawatch. Then he just goes with the flow and gives the other party a big surprise. Uehara Shiroa is quite looking forward to this. In the Hueco Mundo, with the full power of the Hogyoku, Aizen's Arrancar experiment was carried out perfectly. The newly born Arrancar became more powerful and more stable. The boundary-breaking Arrancar technology is approaching perfection. Aizen began to create a new generation of Arrancar on a large scale, with the capable ones promoted and the weak ones demoted. After some operations, the Espada became unprecedentedly powerful, and the entire Arrancar core also developed rapidly. In a short period of time, Hueco Mundo has undergone earth-shaking changes. Not only has Las Noches become larger and more spectacular, but the number of Arrancar has also increased sharply. The entire Hueco Mundo has been brought under Aizen's control. The potential, cognition and level of civilization of a group of Great Hollows have been forcibly raised to a higher level. The Arrancar no longer have the worry of degenerating into wild beasts. From this point of view, it is not an exaggeration for these Arrancar to kneel down and call Aizen their leader. Aizen also has more ideas about the Hogyoku. In order to verify these ideas, test the combat effectiveness of the Arrancar, and further stimulate the potential of Ichigo Kurosaki, he sent several of them to the human world. At the base of Karakura town, Uehara Shiroa enjoyed the gentle and comfortable massage of Ora Mishabane while releasing his observation haki to cover the entire Karakura town. Now that he was here, he wanted to say hello to a few old friends and watch the first appearance of Shinji. At this time, in the school, Ichigo was surprised to find that his friend Tatsuki Arisawa could see the Shinigami substitute badge. This was the badge that Captain Yukite gave him to prove his identity. At that time, the other party also said something meaningful. However, he didn't understand it. The composition of the Shinigami substitute badge is the same as the objects and spirits of the Soul Society, which are all composed of pure Reisure. It stands to reason that humans who do not have Ryatsu talent cannot see the Shinigami substitute badge, just like they cannot see the hollows in Shinigami. He was sure that Tatsuki Arisawa did not have Ryuryoku talent before. But before he could figure out what was going on, the class bell rang. Although Ichigo Kurosaki killed the hollow and became a Shinigami, he also took the time to invade the Soul Society during the holiday and made a big fuss. But he was still a good student, and even his grades did not fall behind. During class, the homeroom teacher Misato Oki introduced the new transfer student Shinji Hirako. The other person had blonde hair combed into bangs on both sides, which is also known as a pageboy haircut. This blonde pageboy haircut is quite funny, with his name written backwards, and it is written very well. Shinji Hirako and Kigo Asano are both funny players, and they are very good at livening up the atmosphere. When introducing himself, the other party kept making jokes, and it looked like he was performing a comedy routine with the teacher, which was very funny. The classmates were amused several times. For a while, the classroom was filled with a happy atmosphere. Ichigo Kurosaki, who was worried, was concentrating on thinking about something, and seemed a little out of place. At this time, Shinji Hirako sat next to him and took the initiative to say hello. "We are neighbors, we should get along well, Kurosaki-san." Facing the self-familiar Shinji Hirako, Ichigo Kurosaki responded a little stiffly but politely, "Pleased to meet you." In fact, his mind was not on studying or the new transfer student. Ever since he found out that the hollow in his body could seize his consciousness, he was afraid. Chapter 127, Visored in Arrancar Corps. He was afraid that if he continued like this, he would completely become a hollow, and he was even more afraid that he would hurt the people around him. Although Ichigo didn't want to admit it, he was indeed different from his other classmates. Even compared to other Shinigami, he seemed very different. In addition, during the battle in Soul Society, Inoue Oraheim and Sato Yasutora were seriously injured while trying to help him. Ishida Yuryu even lost his Quincy power and still hadn't recovered. The thing was, although he successfully rescued Rukia, he felt very uneasy about Aizen. The strength and wisdom of that Shinigami captain were truly terrifying. Looking at the confused Ichigo Kurosaki, Shinji Hirako showed an ambiguous smile. Observing this scene, Shiroa thought with disdain. "You're so old, yet you still act like a high school student. You're worthy of being you, Hirako Shinji." The Visored had been dormant for so long, and finally took action. On one hand, now that Aizen was exposed, they could act without worrying about being attacked from all sides. If they were attacked by Soul Society while dealing with Aizen, it would be too much. On the other hand, their situation was basically stable, and they could already control the power of the hollow in their bodies. Shiroa was still a little curious about the strength of the Visored. He really wanted to see how many punches they could take. Not long after school, Ichigo heard a quick warning sound from his Shinigami badge. He knew that a hollow had appeared. "Here we go again." After complaining casually, he used the substitute Soul Reaper badge to enter his spirit state, and let Khan temporarily take care of his body. After a quick walk, Ichigo found the hollow that had invaded the real world. He chopped down with his sword and killed the pig-faced hollow. After that, Ichigo happened to meet the station Shinigami who came to purify the hollow. The other party claimed to be Zenisuke Kuramadani, an elite Shinigami who replaced Rukia to guard Karakura town. Although Ichigo took out his substitute Soul Reaper badge to prove his identity, the Afro Shinigami didn't acknowledge it at all, laughed at him, and said he had never heard of such a thing. While arguing, Ichigo felt a chill coming from behind him. He turned around without hesitation and swung Zangetsu to slash backwards. At this moment, a figure was rushing towards him with a strange pace, head and feet up and down, coming behind Ichigo. The man slashed with a sword. Fortunately, Ichigo reacted in time and blocked the sword with Zangetsu. For a moment, a crisp and cold collision sound was heard. Two powerful Ryatsus collided in mid-air, triggering a series of terrifying slashing waves. The shock wave caused by the fight between the two blew away the shocked and confused Afro Shinigami. "Kurosaki-san, don't you know how to restrain your power? If you use your Ryatsu to explode at full force like this, it will attract some terrible things." When he saw the person clearly, Ichigo was stunned for a moment and asked in surprise, "Are you Hirako Shinji?" The expression of the transfer student who was originally sloppy now seemed a little weird. Coupled with his doll-like mouth and the strange tongue ring, it gave people a very bad feeling. This guy's Ryatsu wasn't right, inexplicably a little familiar, and gave people an ominous and cold feeling. Shinji Hirako, who had yellow hair and a bob haircut, showed a somewhat weird smile. Did you just realize it now? I'd been with you for a few days, and it seems that you are indeed a little slow. Originally, he came to recruit Ichigo because he heard Urahara Kisuke say that this was a good seedling. After all, the debt from 100 years ago had been delayed for long enough, and it was time to get it back with interest. After this test, he found that this kid's Ryatsu was indeed very strong, but he was a little dull. But he could just take him back and train him well, it wasn't a big problem. Why are you following me? Ichigo looked confused. And what do you mean by the scary thing you mentioned? Shinji Hirako shook his head. It seems that if I don't explain it to you directly, you won't understand. To some extent, you and I are the same kind of people. I am also an existence that has stepped into the realm of the hollow from the Shinigami. I am the Visored. After saying this, in front of Ichigo's shocked eyes, Shinji wiped his face with his hand. Suddenly, a white hollow mask appeared, covering half of Shinji's face. You? Looking at the hollow mask that suddenly appeared, Ichigo thought of his own experience, his pupils shrank, and his body trembled slightly. He didn't expect that there were people who were really like him. No one understood his feelings during this period, even his best friends were no exception. No one could tell the depression and pain in his heart. Shinji Hirako said in a very serious tone. Didn't I say that? We have to get along well. You don't belong to the Shinigami at all, and you can never fit into their world. So, do you want to join us? Ichigo was very conflicted. He didn't want to be a unique outlier, but he didn't want to get too involved with various forces. He was very satisfied with his current life and identity. You have no choice, those guys are here, you have to fight, Shinji emphasized. After secretly following and spying on Ichigo during this period, he already knew something about him. He knew that Ichigo didn't want to fight, but he also knew that he cared about the people around him. Ichigo had a bad feeling in his heart. What have you been talking about? Who the hell are those guys? Need I say more? Of course it's the Arrancar, the monster from Hueco Mundo. Shinji looked solemn, and he used his spiritual sense to detect several strange Ryatsus in the distance. He knew that this was the work of Aizen. And based on the strength of these Arrancars, they could also formulate a more complete revenge plan. Ichigo also opened his spiritual sense belatedly, and then felt several unusually heavy and strange Ryatsus. At the same time, Kan, who controlled Ichigo's body, and Ishida Yurio, who had lost his power, were targeted by the enemy. On Kan's side, Ichigo's father, Isshin Kurosaki, arrived in time and attacked in the form of a Shinigami to save Ichigo's body. Isshin, who had regained his power as a Shinigami, killed the Hollow who had killed his beloved wife Masaki, and put his mind at ease. This Hollow, who had been doing evil for many years, had been transformed into an Arrancar by Aizen using the power of the Hogyoku. His transformation into an Arrancar was very thorough, and his strength had skyrocketed. Fortunately, Isshin's strength remained the same as before, and had even increased, so he won easily. At the same time, Ishida Yurio, who had lost his Quincy power, was also in danger. He could only fight with Ryuryoku items he brought back from Soul Society. However, this opponent was not ordinary, and he had lost the power of a Quincy, so Yurio quickly fell into crisis. At this moment, a powerful spirit arrow shot over and directly killed the Hollow that was attacking him. When Ishida Yurio looked back, he saw a familiar figure. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Why is it you, Ryuken?" It turned out that it was his father, Ryuken Ishida, who saved Yurio at the critical moment. In the critical moment, both fathers rescued their children. It vividly illustrated what older people or more experienced means. In the dark night, Ryuken Ishida, dressed in a suit and leather shoes, holding a bow in his left hand and his right hand in his pocket, slowly walked out. With a head of silver hair, he walked in a cat step, calm and elegant, and pretentious as the wind. He drew his bow and arrow at lightning speed and killed the last Hollow in seconds. After doing all this, he said in a very calm voice, "You actually called your father by his name. You are still the same as before, Yuryu. After losing that half-baked power, you actually became so weak. Is this the power you are looking for?" Ignoring his father's ridicule, Ishida Yuria said in a daze, "Didn't you give up on the Quincy? How could you still have such power? Don't you hate Quincy? Why are you saying such thing?" At this moment, he really felt that the power of the Quincy was not worth it, just like when he was a child. When he was very young, he found that his father had failed his grandfather's expectations and refused to inherit the family. He was puzzled and asked why his father did this, but he replied with cold and ruthless words, "Because Quincy doesn't make money." Because of this ridiculous reason, his grandfather was repeatedly disappointed, and finally died tragically in an isolated battle. Ishida Yuryu, who had a deep relationship with his grandfather, could not understand or forgive his father. Since his grandfather's death, he has called his father by his name. "I've said it before, I have no interest and you have no talent." Ryukin Ishida's expression was exactly the same as before, calm and cold. "I am the last pure-blooded Quincy in this world, and I have inherited all the abilities and techniques of this title. My power is unique and beyond your imagination. This is the truth." Hearing the conversation between the two, Shiroha raised his lips and thought to himself, "Ryukin Ishida, you look very cool when you pretend to be cool. But I think you don't even understand your own son. Ishida Yuryu has been a special child since he was young. During the 1,000-year Blood War, Ishida Yuryu awakened the Script ability of the same level as the final boss Yawatch. Both of them have Script A abilities. Script is ineffective against Ishida Yuryu. Yawatch's all-seeing and all-powerful eyes can see through and change all futures. But he can't see through the future of the Soul King and Ishida Yuryu. This is bigger than the protagonist Kurosaki Ichigo to some extent. Saying that the future Script A and the heir of the Invisible Empire have no talent is really a bit presumptuous. While thinking, Uehara Shiroha used his observation haki to observe Ishida Yuryu's condition. Sure enough, in the case of close combat with hollows, this guy was not hurt at all. Why do Quincy's always use spirit arrows to kill hollows from a distance? The answer is simple, because everything about hollows is a deadly poison to Quincy's, and this is hollow poison. Because of this, when Yawatch started the war against Soul Society in the Soul King Palace, the first thing he did was to personally attack Hueco Mundo first. By the way, he also captured the queen of Hueco Mundo, Tyr Harabel, for a bondage play. Hueco Mundo and Arrancar are not innocent victims. Because the hollows, especially the Arrancar, are a great threat to the stern Ritter. Gremi Thumos, which opened the perfect body, absorbed the spirit of the beast god, and the perfect body was contaminated. However, Ishida Yuryu is not afraid of the power of the hollow. He has no problem fighting with the hollow at close range. However, Ishida Yuryu, who did not awaken his script, is not powerful and is in a weakened state. Uehara Shiroha is not very interested in this kind of existence for the time being. As for the so-called omniscience and omnipotence, he does not take it seriously. What kind of omniscience and omnipotence that can be affected by illusions is true omniscience and omnipotence? The omniscience and omnipotence of the Soul King still has some weight, and the omniscience and omnipotence of Yawatch can only be regarded as a more powerful space-time ability. In front of Shunkyo, all the power of time and space is just illusion. On the other hand, Ichigo Kurosaki resolutely rejected Shinji Hirako's recruitment. "I am a Shinigami, not one of you. I will not join you." What he identified with was not the power or identity of the Shinigami, but the responsibility and experience. To him, being a Shinigami represented protection. Just like Batman never walked out of that alley in his life, a part of Ichigo Kurosaki's heart will always stay on the day when he failed to successfully protect his mother. "This brat is really troublesome," Shinji Hirako complained, looking at Ichigo Kurosaki, who left in an instant. However, he didn't really take Ichigo's refusal to heart. He understood him. No matter what, this kid would have to compromise in the end. Moreover, the two sides have a common enemy and a basis for cooperation. After sensing Ichigo's Ryatsu, Isshin Kurosaki also said goodbye to Kasuke Urahara and returned home. He didn't want his son to know his identity for the time being. Shiroha also heard the conversation between Ishin and Urahara. After seeing the strength of the new Arrancar, the senior group was full of fear of Aizen and the Arrancar. If things continue to develop like this, the existence of the Arrancar may really affect the world situation and may even destroy the real world. After all, the real world is too fragile to resist the invasion of the Arrancar Corps and Aizen. And they have to consider the possible danger. Shiroha doesn't have so many concerns. He is not the same kind of person as these two people. The thinking of some people in the world of death really cannot be measured by common sense. For example, Ishin watched his son being fooled by Urahara Kisuk and others into life and death situations. To put it bluntly, the collapse of the three realms into the original world is a disaster for ordinary people. But for a top Ryuryoku owner like Ichigo Kurosaki, it doesn't matter at all, and it can even be said to be a good thing. Moreover, knowing that the power of the hollow will be passed on, the couple insisted on having children, and gave birth to 3. They really treat the hollow as a family heirloom and want to pass it down. Moreover, it is passed on to males but not females, and the more it is passed, the more powerful it becomes. If Ichigo was not the protagonist, the couple would have ruined their children. What if the offspring loses control and completely becomes a hollow? Who should be blamed? But in a sense, the couple is a perfect match, and they are both very thick-skinned. They do these things and make such choices, which is in line with their personality. However, Shiroha is not so hot-blooded. He takes it when there is benefit, and spends it when there is no benefit. Being able to enjoy yourself while mastering the overall situation is the real skill. The next day, in the eastern woods of Karakura town, a round crater suddenly appeared on the ground with a loud bang. This scene looked like the Scions in Dragon Ball coming to Earth in a spaceship. At this time, 2 Arrancars, one large and one small, walked out of the crater. The 2 Arrancars wore high-collared, long-sleeved coat-like jackets with white tops and black bottoms and black edges. They wore white hakama pants and were tied with a wide black obi. This is the standard uniform of the Espada, which is based on the Haori of the Shinigami captains and the Death Hegemony. In addition, a long sword was hung on each of their waistbands. Chapter 128, Yoruchi saves the day in the existence that must not be provoked. This is the Arrancar's Zanpakuto. The big Arrancar is very large, with dark skin and black hair. There are 4 strangely shaped protrusions on the top of his head, and symmetrical red stripes on both cheeks. The remaining hollow mask after transformation is at his chin, shaped like a mandible. There is a black hollow hole in the center of his chest. From the beginning, this huge Arrancar exudes a rough, barbaric and bloodthirsty aura of tyranny, a bit like Kenpachi Zaraki. The small Arrancar is slender, with a cold temperament and short black hair. His skin is pale, and his pair of green pupils are very transparent, like emeralds, with the middle pupil shaped like a cat-like slit. There are also dark green tear marks on his face. A broken mask shaped like a horned helmet hangs on the left half of his black hair. The giant Arrancar spoke impatiently. Ulquiorra, this place is still as boring as before. I came here a few times a long time ago when my mask was intact. I didn't expect that this place hasn't changed at all after such a long time. Let's finish the mission quickly and go back. Ulquiorra, with 2 tear marks on his face, looked cold and imposing, and spoke slowly. Yami, I told you that I was the only one who needed to come here, but you were the one who insisted on coming. If you say so, then so be it. Yami curled his lips and asked, why are we here? To kill some bugs? Not several, but only one. Ulquiorra corrected expressionlessly. There are only 4 people in the entire world who can threaten us. The others are garbage. And we need to kill one of them to clear the obstacles for Lord Aizen. That person is called Kurosaki Ichigo. As he was speaking, people around them gathered curiously. In their opinion, the huge crater was empty. No meteorites, no spaceships, no explosion residue. That's strange. How did the loud noise just now in this crater appear? Facing the unsuspecting passers-by, Yami became furious and roared, what are you guys looking at? They can't see us at all. Ulquiorra didn't even look at the passers-by around him, his expression cold with no fluctuation. Yami shouted loudly, of course I know, but I just don't like being watched by people like a monkey in a zoo. After saying that, he started to suck souls without hesitation. Under the influence of his powerful Ryatsu, a large number of human souls began to leave their bodies and gathered here. In the blink of an eye, the souls of all people in this area were sucked into his mouth and turned into his food. Within the range of the Ryatsu, humans who lost their souls fell to the ground. Corpses fell from the crater to the residential area. After a big meal, Yami stopped sucking souls and said with disgust, "It's really disgusting, I've never eaten anything so disgusting." Ulquiorra said in a matter-of-fact tone, "How can such scum, with such weak souls, be delicious?" While the two were talking, a faint voice came, "Who are you?" When he heard the voice, Yami looked up. Then, he saw a weak figure struggling to get up in the pile of dead bodies. This person was Ichigo Kurosaki's childhood friend, Arisawa Tatsuki. She was keen on karate, and after completing the club training, she ran here to exercise. Recently, she has not been doing well. Because these days, she slowly saw some incredible scenes and remembered some erased memories. She was very worried and terrified, but she didn't know whether what she saw was true or false. Until today, Arisawa Tatsuki saw two weirdos. One of the weirdos did something and then everyone fell to the ground. As the huge weirdo approached, she felt her body trembling and her consciousness blurred. At this moment, she couldn't even blink and completely lost the ability to move. In an instant, Arisawa Tatsuki seemed to see the gate of heaven and her grandmother waving at her. Yami walked up to Arisawa Tatsuki and said in surprise, "Since you were not sucked away by my soul, it means that there is some kind of power in your soul. So you are not an ordinary person." As he said this, he turned his head slightly and asked his companion, "Ulquiorra, is this the guy we want to kill?" "Look carefully, idiot," Ulquiorra said in a calm tone. "You just approached, and this person's soul is about to collapse. How could such a person be our target? Just trash." As he spoke, he slightly unzipped the high collar of his white coat, revealing the dark hollow on his throat. Although there are many people in Karakura town, there are only a few who are stronger than them in Ryatsu. Therefore, as long as he sees the target, he can easily distinguish them. For the same reason, they are also very conspicuous in the eyes of those people. In addition, they made such a big noise that Ichigo might show up soon. He was ready for the battle. After listening to Ulquiorra's words, Yami turned his head, looked at Arisawa Tatsuki, curled his lips and said, "It turns out that you are just lucky to survive. How boring. In that case, then go and die." After saying that, he kicked out. His football kick was powerful and heavy. Although he didn't use much strength, he should be able to easily kick the trash's head. At this time, Arisawa Tatsuki even had a hard time staying conscious, let alone dodging. She didn't even realize that she was about to die. At the critical moment, Sato Yasutora and Inoue Oraheim arrived in time. The little giant, Sato, summoned the Brazo Derecha de Gigante, right arm of the giant, to block Yami's flying kick. His arm turned into a shield with a black background and red stripes, which has amazing defensive power. This is his fullbring. His dark skin is a symbol of strength, and it is also the best protective color for the night. Therefore, he likes his skin very much. This love, plus the Soul King fragment, became his fullbring, which is the Brazo Derecha de Gigante for defense and the Brazo Izquierda del Diablo, left arm of the devil, for attack. Now, he has only awakened the Brazo Derecha de Gigante. Feeling the amazing power coming from the right arm that turned into a shield, Sato's heart sank slightly. Just a random kick has such power. This guy is indeed not an enemy that Inoue can deal with. In fact, he himself did not have the confidence to fight such a terrifying enemy. However, he had no choice. His power is not used to hurt others, but to protect. Now is the time for him to use this power. "Inoue, you take Tatsuki away first." While saying this, Sato is ready for battle. Not far away, in the small world-like space, Shiroa was watching this scene with great interest. Sato Yasutora's strength was not outstanding, but this guy's motto was very famous: "I can't hold you if I hold the sword tightly, and I can't protect you if I put it down." This sentence is even more well known than Aizen's admiration is the furthest feeling from understanding. But what's interesting is that Sato Yasutora, or known more by Chad, doesn't use a sword and doesn't have a fixed CP. This guy is actually a boxer and will become a professional boxer in the future. It seems that this person is very incompatible with this sentence. But in fact, this sentence is the important reason why Ichigo Kurosaki and Chad became good friends, and it is also a true portrayal of the two. Both of them are born with supernatural powers. Both of them chose to use their strength or swords to protect, not to kill. This is the belief that the two have been through. The theme of death has always included anti-war elements. Several bosses who started the war did not have a good end in the end. The Soul King also sacrificed himself for the overall situation and for the balance of the three realms. Shiroa can also understand the lofty spirit of these people, and doesn't mind praising their fearless sacrifices. Then, he should do what he should do. As long as you don't oppose him, everything will be fine. In front of the meteorite crater, facing the ready-to-attack Sato, Yami did not take action immediately, but continued to ask Ulquiorra. Is this the guy? Although the person in front of him seemed a little stronger than the trash before, he still couldn't be sure. Yami, when you go back, practice your probing skills a little bit, and make your own judgments in the future, okay? Ulquiorra's expression became even colder. A guy of this level can be seen at a glance, and he is also trash. Even a calm person like him has a temper. The espada is not some human combat power detector. Yami nodded and said, I see. At this time, Sato swung the Brazo Derecha de Gigante to attack El Directo. A pale blue spirit shockwave completely enveloped the enemy's huge head. Faced with this powerful attack beyond that of an ordinary vice-captain, Yami swatted it away without even looking. Chad, who was slapped away by a single hit, fell to the ground without a groan and fainted on the spot. The Brazo Derecha de Gigante was also broken, but it still maintained the basic full bring form. Inoue Oraheim, who had been paying attention to the situation, ran over, looked at the fallen Chad, and shouted loudly. The huge Yami looked down at Inoue Oraheim with tears in her eyes, and said in a cruel and expectant tone. Ulquiorra, is this woman also trash? Yes, also trash. Ulquiorra closed his eyes gently. He had foreseen the scene of this woman being smashed into a meat pie. Although he has no emotions, does not care about other people's lives or deaths, and does not care about anything. But when beautiful things are broken in front of his eyes, he will still choose not to look directly. Hearing his companion's answer, Yami mercilessly attacked Inoue Oraheim. But now Oraheim has made up her mind. After the battle in Soul Society, she has grown a lot, and the shield Shun Shun Rika has become stronger. She first used the defensive Santen Keshin to block Yami's attack, and then used the Soten Kishun to start healing Chad's arm. Under the effect of Soten Kishun, Chad's broken Brazo Derecha de Gigante began to recover slowly. His arm is still in the full bring state. Normal healing ability should be ineffective. However, Soten Kishun broke common sense. What? How can it be restored like this? Yami was surprised and said unhappily, it turns out that this guy is still alive. I attacked him, but he is still alive. This is really unpleasant. At this time, Ulquiorra looked at Chad's recovering black arm and thought with a little surprise. This is not a healing ability. Is it a time regression or a space regression? But no matter which one it is definitely not an ordinary healing ability. What a strange human being, woman. This woman's ability seems interesting. Should we keep her for Lord Aizen? Yami remembered that Aizen was very interested in these strange abilities. So, he asked one more question. Ulquiorra regained his composure and said without hesitation, no need. This weak ability is nothing at all. Goodbye then. Hearing this, Yami slapped out with his palm, intending to flatten the two small bugs in front of him. At the critical moment, Ichigo descended from the sky to block Yami. After a brief conversation, he activated Bankai Tensa Zangetsu and instantly cut off one of Yami's arms. Seeing this scene, Ulquiorra secretly complained that Yami was too careless and didn't even dodge the sword. At the same time, he also saw that Kurosaki Ichigo's Ryatsu was very strong. After all, the opponent cut off one of Yami's arms effortlessly with one move. Yami's steel skin is very hard, but it couldn't block the opponent's blade at all. It hasn't been long since this guy completed Bankai. Such a speed of improvement is indeed a bit amazing. No wonder Lord Aizen pays special attention to this Shinigami named Kurosaki Ichigo. However, to this extent, it is completely impossible for him to pose a threat to Lord Aizen. However, soon, Ichigo Kurosaki's invincible experience expired. At the critical moment, White jumped in and said that he would go out and kill the two Arrancar. Ichigo Kurosaki was hollowified on the spot. He was afraid of becoming a monster in front of his friends, and he was even more afraid that his consciousness would be replaced, which would lead to the death of others. This distraction caused him to be hit hard by Yami, and then he was stunned by the punch, and his body could not even move. Yami, who lost his arm, swung his fist with his remaining hand and beat Ichigo Kurosaki violently. Each punch was heavier than the last, and Ichigo Kurosaki was beaten unconscious. Gradually losing consciousness, he looked at Orihime Inoue and Chad, who fell to the ground helplessly, his heart broken. He now understands. If he doesn't solve the hollow in his body, he will never be able to fight normally. And if he can't fight, he can't protect anyone. He can't put down the sword. This guy's Ryatsu is abnormal. Ulquiorra watched the scene calmly, feeling a little curious. The Ryatsu of this Shinigami fluctuated. When it was high, it was even higher than his, but when it was low, it was no different from trash. Such an extreme Ryatsu span was definitely not normal. There must be something wrong with this guy's body. Is he really a fake Shinigami? In the end, he couldn't even control his own power, which was really sad. It seems that I can report this good news to Lord Aizen. When Yami was about to give Kurosaki Ichigo a fatal blow, he heard a whistling wind and a purple figure appeared instantly. The person who came was the flash goddess Shihoin Yoruchi. After a set of cool combos, she knocked down an enemy that was several times her size. Just now, she only used pure Hakuda to easily defeat the strong enemy. However, she immediately felt a piercing pain in her hands. She looked down and found that her hands were already bleeding. It turned out that her Ryatsu had just penetrated the enemy's defense. But the opponent's steel skin was too strong, and even a little recoil force injured her hands. Shihoin Yoruchi ignored the fallen Yami, but went to check on the situation of Kurosaki Ichigo and Inoue Orihime first. Just as she was feeding medicine to the seriously injured Orihime, Yami, who had fallen to the ground, suddenly stood up, roared, and a red siro quickly formed in his mouth. Originally, Shihoin Yoruchi didn't take the opponent's counterattack seriously. After all, after taking a set of her combos and breaking an arm, this guy was already very tenacious to be able to stand up. However, she didn't expect that the opponent could actually release a powerful siro, and it seemed very fast. Caught off guard, she was submerged by the terrifying red siro. For a moment, the thick and heavy Ryatsu tore through the sky, covering everything. Dust flew, and the earth cracked. Ha ha ha, dead. I won. Yami laughed wildly with pride. Ulquiorra also looked at the smoke and dust in front of him with his emerald eyes. He recognized who the person was. He didn't believe that a strong person of that level would die so easily. But at least they should be seriously injured. Because they didn't hide at all in order to protect the wounded. But when the smoke and dust dissipated, the two powerful Arrancar were stunned. They saw a white coat fluttering in the wind, and a slender figure stood in front of the two with his hands in his pockets. He looked relaxed and calm, as if he didn't take the two powerful Arrancars seriously at all. Chapter 129, Miraculous Skills, Killing the Enemy Without Being Seen. Faced with the sudden change, everyone was shocked. Shiroha! Seeing the figure in front of her, Shihoin Yoruchi, who had originally looked desperate, was overjoyed. Just now, in order to protect Inoue Orihime and Kurosaki Ichigo, she was ready to risk her life. She was prepared to be seriously injured. However, after the siro, Shihoin Yoruchi was safe and sound. She looked up and saw the familiar tall figure. She felt stable instantly. Uehara Shiroha was so reliable and reassuring. At the same time, Urahara Kisuke in the distance also wiped his non-existent sweat and gave up the rescue. Fortunately, this man came out in time, otherwise things would have been very serious. It was because of the existence of Uehara Shiroha that he chose to observe secretly and let Shihoin Yoruchi go to the front. In this way, he could collect more information and catch the enemy by surprise. He was not afraid of failure at all. Even if he did not believe in his own strength, he would never doubt the ability of Shiroha. With this man around, Yoruchi would never get into trouble. This was indeed the case. At this time, Yami, who was a little dizzy, looked at Uehara Shiroha in shock and said angrily, "Where did you come from? What did you do just now? Where is my Siro?" If the other party had blocked or even shattered his Siro, he would not be so shocked. But because the distance was very close, he vaguely saw that his Siro suddenly disappeared, as if it was eaten. He couldn't understand how this could happen. Aizen really created something special, Uehara Shiroha said calmly. Low-level Ryatsu cannot sense high-level Ryatsu. This is the basic rule of the universe. Your Siro was swallowed by this basic rule. Yami looked confused, as if he had awakened the holy word D. What are you talking about? He could understand every word of what this person said, but when they were put together, he couldn't understand it at all. It was really a headache. At this moment, Ulquiorra realized that something was wrong and immediately reminded him. We need to go, he is Uehara Shiroha. As he said this, he grabbed Yami and turned back, while opening the Garganta. Before, he recognized Shihoin Yoruchi. He knew that this woman was one of the few who could compete with them. However, his expression was still very calm. After all, the other party was just in existence at the same level as them. 2-1, they had a huge advantage and didn't need to panic at all. However, when Uehara Shiroha appeared, the situation was different. Ulquiorra's expression fluctuated for the first time. Lord Aizen's order was very clear. When they meet Urahara Kisuke and Shihoin Yoruchi, they could temporarily retreat or fight. But when they meet Uehara Shiroha, they must retreat and must not conflict with him. Aizen said frankly that this was for their own good, because he didn't want to lose capable men before the war. The other party was such an existence that Lord Aizen paid special attention to. The legends about this person were widely circulated in Hueco Mundo. His strength was definitely extraordinary. Although there were a few stubborn Arrancar who didn't believe in these rumors, Ulquiorra was definitely not one of them. So, in an instant, he made the fastest reaction and exerted his speed to the extreme. As the Garganta opened, the figures of Ulquiorra and Yami quickly disappeared into it. He runs pretty fast. Uehara Shiroha was too lazy to chase him. The old fox and the Zero Squad were not in a hurry, so why should he be in a hurry? Aizen was not going to deal with him, but the Central 46 and the Soul King Palace. Compared with the Central 46, Aizen was more sensible, at least he gave them enough benefits. He wouldn't suffer any loss anyway, so why bother? While thinking, Shiroha glanced at Urahara Kisuke who came late, raised his eyebrows and said, "What did you see?" He was very clear about the other party's style of doing things, and he also knew that this guy had been observing in secret. In the original plot, Urahara Kisuke played a door opener whose main job was to open doors for Kurosaki Ichigo. From the Soul Society to the Soul King Palace, there was no door that this guy couldn't open. It was simply the Anywhere Door reincarnation. He suspected that this guy could even handle the Gate of Hell. Unless there was no other choice, Urahara would never take the initiative to show up and fight with others. Fighting wits and collecting intelligence were what the other party was best at. Moreover, Shiroha was sure that the other party not only wanted to collect information about the Arrancar, but also wanted to collect and analyze his intelligence. "I'm sorry, I'm late." Shiroha gave him a look, and Urahara Kisuke felt a lot of pressure. He decisively admitted his mistake and apologized first. When Yoruchi treated Ichigo and others, Shiroha began to interrogate the poor shop manager. Urahara Kisuke had no words to say. He felt that his little thoughts were completely seen through. But he was not right in these few incidents. And Captain Commander Uehara's words were straight to the point, making him speechless and sweating profusely. In the Las Noches Palace of Hueco Mundo, Aizen's expression changed on the throne. "They are back. But it seems that things are not going well. As soon as the words fell, black ripples appeared in the space, forming a garganta. Ulquiorra and the broken-armed Yami walked out. Ikemara Jin, who was at the bottom of the stairs, looked at the two Arankars who walked out of the garganta, narrowed his eyes, and smiled. Tozen Kaname frowned. He didn't like hollows and Arankars in the first place, and he looked down on these people who didn't know what justice was. Lord Aizen. Yami and Ulquiorra saluted Aizen first, then reported the information about the world of the living. Ulquiorra, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Speaking of what happened just now, Yami said indignantly. I can still fight. As long as I use my Resurrection, that guy is no match for me. I am Espada Zero, the Rage Beast, the strongest Arankar among the Espada. He felt that the man who suddenly appeared was just a little weird. From beginning to end, he did not feel any danger. That guy must have special abilities, so he could eliminate his Zero. For a clown like that, he could kill him with one punch after Resurrection, so there was no need for him to run. Ikemara Jin narrowed his eyes and fanned the flames. I think you are right. This is a good opportunity to gather intelligence. It would be a pity to miss it. Maybe with luck, you can make a great contribution. He was just watching the fun. In his opinion, let alone the two Arankars, even if all the Espada worked together, they would not be a match for Uehara Shiroha. The opponent's Zanpakuto was too terrifying. Therefore, even if the two Arankars used all their skills and activated their Resurrection, they would still be nothing but trash in front of that man. You, the Shinigami, have some vision. Yami thought that Ikemara Jin was on his side. He slightly changed his opinion of this man. Ulquiorra remained silent. Tozen Kaname said with a dark face. No. Ulquiorra's judgment was very accurate. When facing that person, you must not be careless or take chances. If you had escaped a little slower, you might have been caught. In his opinion, let alone bringing back information about Uehara Shiroha, it was already good enough to be able to save his life from that monster. In fact, they didn't dodge and were already hit. At this moment, Aizen, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke. His eyes lit up slightly, and he looked at Ulquiorra and Yami with anticipation, as if he was appreciating a work of art. Then the next moment, Yami screamed in pain. He looked down and found that blood was gushing out of his left shoulder. Very abruptly, half of his shoulder and his only arm disappeared, as if some invisible monster had eaten his arm in one bite. From beginning to end, he had no idea where the attack came from, and the steel skin did not play any role. This is Las Noches, the headquarters of the Arankars. How could it be attacked? This is really strange. And this attack is too weird. There was no sign beforehand, and there was no Reiatsu fluctuation afterwards. I can't understand it, I have no clue at all. But this feeling is very familiar, just like the disappearance of his Zero. While using Reiatsu to heal the wound, Yami asked in doubt. Lord Aizen, what is going on? Why did my hand suddenly disappear? This is impossible. It's not just you. After saying that, Ikemara Jin looked at Ulquiorra with a gloating look. In fact, he secretly exclaimed in his heart, I didn't expect that Uehara Shiroha's strength is getting stronger and stronger. This move is incredible, even I can't understand it. My old classmate is getting more and more incomprehensible. At this time, Yami noticed that Ulquiorra, like him, had also suddenly and inexplicably lost his left arm. Even me. At this moment, Ulquiorra's heart was filled with shock. Why can't it recover? His arm could not regenerate at all. In order to gain stronger power, ordinary Espada completely abandoned the ability of super speed regeneration when they evolved. However, he was different. He retained the ability of super speed regeneration when he became an Arankar. After becoming an Arankar, his recovery ability became amazing. As long as his internal organs and vital parts were not damaged, he could recover quickly no matter how serious the injury was. Growing an arm was just a piece of cake for him. But now, no matter how he channeled his Reiatsu, his arm could not be restored, as if there was an invisible black hole that swallowed up all his Reiatsu. He even suspected that even if Resurrection could completely restore Ryatsu and injuries, it would not be able to completely heal such an injury. It was as if his arm was wiped out by some kind of rule power. At this moment, Ulquiorra had a flash of inspiration and remembered what Uehara Shiroha said at the time, and his heart became even more uneasy. Is this what is meant by being swallowed by the rules of the universe? I didn't expect it to be true. It's really a terrifying power. At this time, Tozen Kaname realized what was happening. His face turned darker. With his spiritual sense, he could not sense anything. Such an attack was simply impossible to defend against, and it was also very unreasonable. In a way, this was even more terrifying than his Bankai. Even if he used his Bankai himself, he had no confidence that he could cut off the arms of the two Arankars silently. In Las Noches, the strongmen were really frightened by the unpredictable methods of Uehara Shiroha. Until now, the few people present have not figured out how all this happened. This magical scene made them think that they were hit by the Kyoka Suigetsu, and everything they saw was fake. But this is impossible. At the very least, Tozen would not be hit by the Kyoka Suigetsu because he is blind. Lord Aizen would never play such a joke on them. Before this, even Ulquiorra and Yami, the two parties involved, did not feel anything unusual. But Aizen seemed to have foreseen all this in advance. Thinking of this, they turned their eyes to Aizen on the throne, hoping to get a reasonable explanation. In Las Noches, Aizen looked at the four shocked subordinates, and his expression was still very calm. He explained patiently. It's Ryatsu. There is a very strong Ryatsu on your arms. He should have hit you before you came back. Just now, among all the people present, only he noticed the abnormal Ryatsu on the two people's arms. It's not that the perception of others has become dull, but that the Ryatsu is too strong and too hidden. Uehara Shiroha's Ryatsu has surpassed the other four subordinates except him in terms of status. Therefore, they did not notice the abnormality. However, the intensity and destructive power of such Ryatsu are very abnormal. Uehara Shiroha is still a Shinigami, and it is impossible for him to achieve this level with just Ryatsu. It seems to be some strange move, which should be related to the opponent's spacetime ability. What an excellent ability, excellent talent, and excellent move. Very incredible, very interesting. Impossible, he has not moved, I am definitely not seeing things. Yami, who lost both arms, was a little irritable, and his tone was not very good. He was a little anxious. On the one hand, he was beaten so badly, but he was unable to fight back. He was very frustrated and very angry. On the other hand, although he did not want to admit it, he was really scared. This time, the opponent was stronger than he had imagined. Tozen frowned and clenched the Suzamushi in his hand. A mere experiment, a monster who only knew how to kill, dared to talk to Lord Aizen like this. If the opponent had not lost both arms, he would have had to remove one of his arms. Ulquiorra concentrated on thinking for a while, and said, Lord Aizen, my detection have been locked on Uehara Shiroha. I really didn't sense any movement from him, and he didn't even approach us. If the other party drew his sword or made a move, he couldn't have missed it. So, how did they get hit? Could it be that the other party was able to cross two worlds to attack them? This is a bit too unreasonable and should not be possible. He even doubted whether all this was really done by Uehara Shiroha. Or maybe an unknown enemy really sneaked into Las Noches. Some of the visored also have very terrible abilities. It should be the Ryatsu characteristic. At this time, Aizen seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes were full of light. According to his research, whether it is the Shinigami, the Hollow, the Quincy, or the Fullbringer, their power comes from the soul. Even the Soul King is no exception. The dismembered Soul King, just a few soul fragments, can make people awaken incredible abilities, such as the human girl named Inoue Oraheim. Therefore, the soul is the source of power. Ryatsu is also the embodiment of soul power, or to be precise, a partial embodiment. In addition to Ryatsu, the soul also has deeper power and possibilities. And the mind and evolution are the keys to open the soul treasure house and the key to unlocking the power of the soul. When the spirit reaches the extreme, it can draw out the deepest power of the soul, which is the so-called Ryatsu essence and soul essence. Zanpakuto just accelerates this process. And people with extraordinary talents can naturally draw out the power of the soul, such as Yamamoto Genryosei Shigekuni and Hitsugaya Toshiro. The former's Ryatsu before obtaining the Zanpakuto is like a flame that can burn everything. Chapter 130, Spatial Ryatsu, Human and Sword become one. The latter was able to achieve soul resonance with the strongest ice-type Zanpakuto at a very young age. This shows that people with strong souls will also have special characteristics in their Ryatsu. After listening to Aizen's words, Ikamaru Jin said thoughtfully, "If this is the case, it makes sense. Shiroha's spatial ability can ignore the Arrancar's He arrow. Moreover, the opponent's ability is mysterious and unpredictable, so it is not surprising that he can delay the attack. Is it really a time-space ability, and it can also be attached to the Ryatsu? Such an attack can be launched without even approaching the enemy, that is to say, it can only be fought remotely. Once the opponent approaches, it is almost a death sentence. There is no way to crack it. Such ability, such strength, is too terrible." Ulquiorra had a calm face, and he secretly sighed in his heart, there are always people beyond the sky. Although he didn't understand it very well, Yami was shocked. He has lived in Hueco Mundo with his tribe since he was a child and was appreciated by Aizen. He thought he had seen the limit of the world. Who would have thought that there is such a wonderful power in such a terrifying strong man in this world? Yami's eyes were clear and unpolluted by knowledge, and he muttered, "What is the Ryatsu characteristic? Is it a cheating method of the Shinigami? This is a sneak attack. The next time we meet, I will definitely beat him to death." As a half-scientific researcher, Tozen Kaname also has a deep understanding of the soul and Ryatsu of the Shinigami. He thought for a while and was confused. "Lord Aizen, as far as I know, even the Captain Commander cannot do this. Although Wahara Shiroha is very talented and may be able to awaken the Ryatsu characteristics. But it is impossible to achieve this level with only Ryatsu, right? This is more difficult than crushing someone's soul with Ryatsu. After all, it can be done as long as the Ryatsu is strong enough. But what Uehara Shiroha did is equivalent to using Ryatsu to release the power of Zanpakuto. Those who can do this cannot be said to be few and far between, but it can only be said to be unheard of." Aizen was also very interested in this and analyzed. There are two possibilities. First, he has a unique ability that can give Ryatsu powerful characteristics. Second, he has a special technique that can fuse his Zanpakuto with himself. As far as I know, the Shiba family has studied this technology. He even knew that the Shiba family had always wanted to rescue the Soul King. Therefore, they developed a technology that could replace the Soul King, but they didn't know if it was successful. Tozen couldn't help but exclaim, "So Zanpakuto can actually change like this? This is much more powerful than ordinary Bankai. It's a pity that there is no specific data, otherwise, maybe we can find a way to counter it." Aizen looked at the Hogyoku next to him and suddenly said, "In this case, we have to speed up the progress. And the information you brought can help us. It seems that luck is still on our side." While speaking, he made a detailed plan in his mind. He couldn't wait to evolve to a higher level and then accept the challenge of Uehara Shiroha. At this moment, Shiroha has returned to the underground base of Siriidii. While he was enjoying the hot spring, he thought, "By now, Aizen should have received my gift. Now, he should have a sense of crisis, and then he will speed up the cultivation of the Hogyoku." He was also thinking about completing the special task of obtaining the Hogyoku ahead of time. Therefore, while Aizen put pressure on Kurosaki Ichigo and stimulated his potential, Uehara Shiroha also turned into a pressure monster. He deliberately showed his strength to stimulate Aizen and let him cultivate the Hogyoku to perfection as soon as possible. Then, he can pick the fruit. His attack just now was definitely not something that Aizen could handle. Now, even if the opponent didn't sweat, he should be anxious. In addition to fusing the Hogyoku as soon as possible, the opponent has no choice. When he met Ulquiorra and Yami in the world of the living, Shiroha launched a special move. With the help of the unlimited blade works, he fused the ability of the Shunko into the Ryatsu. Because of the characteristics of time and space, creatures touched by the Ryatsu will suffer severe damage in an instant. They can't even detect any crisis. Unless they are close to the top of the Shinigami, even their perception of time will be confused, and it is impossible for them to avoid Shunkyo's attack. This move is just like the one used by Aizen to deal with Yhwach during the Thousand-Year Blood War. At that time, Sasuke Aizen also reached the realm of man and sword unity. The opponent spread the Ryatsu all over hell in advance, and the opponent's Ryatsu contains the ability of Kyoka Suigetsu. So as soon as he entered hell, Yhwach, who hadn't opened his eyes, was hit by Kyoka Suigetsu and misjudged the time to retreat. It was this tiny difference that eventually led to the tragic defeat of the King of the Quincies. This shows how terrifying this ability of man and sword unity is. For the time being, Aizen has not realized that Kyoka Suigetsu is the big daddy. The evolutionary path he is choosing is fundamentally wrong. Therefore, the current Aizen has not developed this ability of man and sword integration. However, even if the opponent successfully develops this ability now, it is useless. Because Uehara Shiroa's ability of man and sword integration is stronger and more unsolvable than the opponent's. Aizen's man and sword integration will reduce the power of Zanpakuto, probably only 70% to 80% of the power when holding the sword. The reason why Yhwach was hit was, first, because of carelessness. After all, Aizen was tied to a chair at the time and couldn't move, and he was not the same kind of person as the Shinigami. Therefore, Yhwach didn't expect Aizen to play this trick at all. Second, because Aizen, who was fused with the Hogyoku, had some transcendent Ryatsu, which greatly enhanced the ability of Kyoka Suigetsu. And Uehara Shiroa's man and sword integration should actually be a combination of Kurosaki Ichigo's final Getsuga Tensho and Aizen's man and sword integration. The result is that he has achieved the state of unity between man and sword, and can use Ryatsu to release the power of Zanpakuto. Moreover, the time and space ability attached to his Ryatsu even surpasses Shunkyo itself. Therefore, he can easily kill an Espada 0 and an Espada 4 without moving. Not to mention killing a captain with one sword, he can now kill a captain with just a glance. This is the horror of the unlimited blade works and the unity of man and sword, and it is a state that no captain of the Shinigami can reach. In fact, let alone the unity of man and sword, even awakening the Ryatsu characteristics is a legend for other Shinigami. And in order to achieve the unity of man and sword, it is not enough to just awaken the Ryatsu characteristics, the Zanpakuto must also be developed to the extreme, even beyond the level of Bankai. It has been 1,000 years for ordinary Shinigami to complete the practice of Bankai. Most Shinigami will never be able to complete Bankai in their entire life. Those with extreme talent can usually only develop their Zanpakuto to a degree close to perfection. Of course, if the status is improved and the Ryatsu is strong enough, it can also be done. The reason why Uehara Shiroa can accomplish such a terrifying ability is inseparable from the support of the task system. With the attribute points provided by the task system, he can quickly improve the proficiency of the unlimited blade works to the great perfection level. This level of unlimited blade works can be said to be an absolute ability of the transcendent level. In this way, he can complete the enhanced version of the unity of man and sword. The unlimited blade works of the great perfection level is already strong to this extent. The unlimited blade works of the perfection level is even stronger, and the Soul King has to kneel when he sees it. As for the realm above the perfection level, it is just a luxury for the time being. Because in order to make the ability of the perfection realm undergo a transformation, he can only rely on the attribute points provided by the system. It is too difficult to improve the proficiency of the perfect level ability through training. Only after thousands of times of practice can he improve a little bit of progress. For the perfect proficiency ability, every point provided by the system is the limit above the limit, the perfection of perfection, which is very precious. With the blessing of attribute points, his perfect level ability can quickly improve proficiency. And every time he adds a point, he also gains some precious insights. Even someone as strong as Uehara Shiroa has to take time to digest these insights. Learning is endless. There is no limit to the practice of ability. Thinking of this, Uehara Shiroa first began to comprehend the perfect level of Shadow Clone. Today's daily task reward added a little Shadow Clone proficiency, and he has not completely absorbed those insights. As his most commonly used ability, Shadow Clone is about to break through the perfect level and be promoted to a higher level ability. After a period of practice, Uehara Shiroa opened his eyes again, and two divine lights flashed from them. He felt that his control over the Shadow Clone had become stronger. Even without specific values, Uehara Shiroa could feel the improvement of his own abilities. He cast the Shadow Clone technique as soon as he thought about it. A group of identical versions of himself instantly appeared around him. The Shadow Clone gradually became like his natural ability. It is an innate ability, not acquired later, just like the arms on the body. This feeling is still very magical. In actual combat, such Shadow Clones are even more terrifying, and they can also gain more proficiency through normal practice. He estimated that it would only take a few points to upgrade the Shadow Clones to group Shadow Clone techniques. Uehara Shiroa opened the panel and took a look. All abilities except the Unlimited Blade Works were at the perfect level. Zanpakuto's skills also reached the 1,000-year captain level. The realm of Zanpakuto is the unity of man and sword. The Ryatsu was first-class Ryuryoku, close to the top of the Shinigami, second only to Aizen and Yamamoto Genryosai Shigakuni. With such a panel and such abilities, even if facing an ordinary transcendent, he can still win. But this is not enough. So, Uehara Shiroa stood up and came to the open space in the underground secret base, and his figure flashed and disappeared. When he used Shuinpa, his speed was much faster than before. The speed of the 1,000-year captain-level Shuinpa is as fast as an ordinary space shuttle. But after all, this is not space transfer, and it has many defects. The Shuinpa of the Shinigami, the Sonito of the Hollow, the Hirenkyaku of the Quincy, and the Bringer Light of the Fullbringer's Fullbring technique each have their own characteristics. However, what they have in common is that these abilities are all high-speed moving steps, which do not involve space. Even if Sonito can avoid detection by nerves, it is not a space transfer, but it is more concealed. Uehara Shiroa is ready to continue to integrate the Ryatsu characteristics of the unity of man and sword into the 1,000-year captain-level Shuinpa. In short, it is to merge the ability of the Hollow with Shuinpa. Although the Garganta technique of the Hollow can travel through space, it consumes a lot of energy. Moreover, when storing oneself into the Shunkyo space in the state of Shirkai, there will be a moment of stagnation. Facing ordinary enemies, even senior captains or even 1,000-year captains, this pause does not matter. But facing those transcendents with abnormal abilities, this stagnation may give others an opportunity to take advantage. Therefore, in conventional combat, Shuinpa is more flexible and convenient. However, Shuinpa is not spatial transfer after all, which will give the enemy time to react. While thinking, Uehara Shiroa drew out Shunkyo and condensed Ryatsu. A faint light flashed above Shunkyo. This layer of light quickly disappeared. But it did not really disappear, but condensed into the blade and melted into the Ryatsu. Because he has developed the second stage of Shunkyo's Bankai, he can easily open Bankai without even using the release. However, in this case, Uehara Shiroa can only use part of the power of Bankai, and cannot use all the power of Bankai. This is also his original intention. After all, if it is a complete Bankai, the movement will be too loud, and even the powerful barrier around it and the thick Racier stone cannot completely block it. And now the combination of human and sword cannot fuse Bankai, only a part of the power of time and space. However, under the blessing of the Unlimited Blade Works, this part of the power of time and space is stronger than that of Shunkyo. As a layer of power above time and space entangled with the Ryatsuan body, his eyes shone with amazing brilliance. After blessing the power of time and space, Uehara Shiroa's combat power instantly soared to an astonishing number. In the case of incomplete Bankai, the increased combat power of Shunkyo is already comparable to the captain level of the 1,000-year. This is the domineering part of the space-type Zanpakuto. In the case of incomplete Bankai, his combat power can even match that of the Transcendent. However, what he needs is not a high probability of victory, but a fair crushing. After all, the abilities of those guards are quite disgusting, and coupled with the resurrection and strengthening mechanism of the Quincy, it is indeed a bit annoying. Therefore, he needs a stronger killing move and an absolute chance of winning. It is best to have the ability to make a final decision, so that these guys with abnormal abilities can never resist. Thinking of this, Uehara Shiroa began to gather the power of Shunkyo and deeply integrate it with his own Ryatsu. At the same time, he moved and performed Shuunpa. After continuous experiments, Uehara Shiroa finally merged Shuunpa with the Ryatsu of the unity of man and sword. After the fusion, his speed was extremely fast. Even if ordinary captains activated their Bankai and tried their best, they would not be able to keep up with his speed. Even when facing Kuchiki Byakuya, who activated his Bankai, he could kill him in one move. The so-called 1,000 Sakura blades and the absolute defense barrier, which were said to be in the billions, were useless in front of him, as if they did not exist. Use one sentence to describe Uehara Shiroa's current feelings. That is, at this moment, he turned into light. Everything in front of him seemed to have become a lens-like existence, which became favorable to light. Therefore, the various substances and energies around him would not only not hinder him, but also make him faster, stronger and more flexible. Uehara Shiroa performed the transformed Shuunpa again. With a flash of his figure, he flew into the sky and swept across the ground like a long rainbow, and instantly arrived at the other side of the base. At this moment, Uehara Shiroa truly experienced what it meant to be free and unrestrained. His speed was extremely fast, even faster than the space shuttle when he was in the state of virtualization. In the process, he passed through several boulders. The original Shuunpa could not pass through matter and would be locked by spiritual perception. In the state of man and sword, he could not only penetrate everything, but also could not be locked by spiritual perception. Such Shuunpa, even the Transcendents could do nothing against. Facing his sudden attack, only the top few strong ones could react. After several more experiments, Uehara Shiroa became more and more satisfied with this extremely fast Shuunpa. This kind of Shuunpa that was unrestrained and penetrated everything was really too strong, allowing him to move freely and come and go as he pleased. As the saying goes, everything can be broken, only speed cannot be broken. When you go out, a powerful Shuunpa is really a must-have skill. After some experiments, Uehara Shiroa nodded with satisfaction and said, "Let's call this move the Tenjin Shuunpa, Heavenly God Flash Step." That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated in Bleach World. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.